Does Jordan Peterson believe in hell? More Alex O'Connor. Like the video, subscribe to his channel. How am I not subscribed? I was subscribed. Oh, I'm under a different YouTube channel and I'm looking at the videos, so forgive me this time. I am subscribed to him on several YouTube channels. We saw in the past Jordan Peterson debate Sam Harris to some extent, and in it, he made it sound like where Sam talks about the most terrible things possible to the greatest things possible, there's a scale, and he's like, oh, you mean hell? And he wants to use biblical language. Like, he prefers using hell, biblical language, in order to describe these things, and you kind of have to ask yourself, look, I get it, you may not think these things are literal, but like, if majority of people are using this language in a very literal fashion, why would you go around continuing using that kind of language? Why not try to use the language, so you're talking to another academic, you want to speak in academic terms. Instead, you want to use the term hell as if there wasn't an afterlife concept of people who suffered attached to this idea. So you act like, well, we're just going to use this idea, but I'm going to reinterpret it. I don't know. If you like these kind of videos, subscribe to this channel, MythVision Reacts. Check the bell and hit all. Like the video. Comment down below your thoughts. Let's get on. Let's see what happens here.
I'd really like to know if Jesus actually rose from the dead as a historical fact. I'd love to know if there was a real Exodus. That's really interesting and important to me. Now, as somebody who doesn't believe that those things did happen, I still have access to the meaning of the story of something like a resurrection.
Well, let's assume, just for the sake
but I'm not a Christian. It's not enough for me to say, well, do I believe that, self-sacrifice is at the basis of a meaningful life? Oh, maybe, but that's not enough to make me a Christian because I don't believe it's the case. I'm quite interested actually how, you're obviously quite attracted to Christianity and the Christian story. You see Jesus on your jacket, but
I think it's true. He uses words. When we all hear that, I think you should go with what most people think definitions mean and the meaning of words mean. When he says true, I think most of us think he means it happened literally as, it's describing. He died, rose again, walked on water, born of a virgin. Now, he may not think all those things actually happened, but when you say it's true, most people aren't going, it has truth in it, or it's teaching us truths, lessons, something we can empathize and feel and experience to the narrative. No, that's not what most people think.
I'm interested how that dovetails with your insistence on personal responsibility as the way to live a proper and meaningful life, given that the story of Jesus is one of vicarious redemption. I sort of throw my sins on him, he takes responsibility for the sins that I've committed.
Yeah, well, I
wonder how those go together.
What would you say?
His jacket. Jordan's jacket.
No, Jesus
it's really good. It's really good to have a divine ally.
Jesus will clean up your room for you. At the same time he said that, Jordan Peterson is saying it's really good to have a divine ally. So you got one saying, we all get where this is coming from. Anyone who's a skeptic, we're not going to throw all of we don't need a scapegoat, right? We need to be responsible for the things that we've done and also understand our shortcomings. Others have it too, and be forgiving about those things.
And I think the more unerringly you aim upward, the more you walk with God. Mm-hmm. And that does mean that Christ is beside you. Mm-hmm. And so that is a reflection of the truth of vicarious redemption. But that doesn't mean you have nothing to do. Mm. Right. And Christ makes that very clear in the Gospels. Not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, right? Only those who do the will of my Father.
You must be willing to hate your brother and your
father.
Alex, you must be willing to hate your mother or your father. Dude, Alex is a trip. It's getting hot. It's getting hot, to say the least. Well, I wish Alex did this with Bear Grylls.
There's a tension there because the vicarious redemption idea is a reflection of the mercy of God. Mm. It's like if you, and I believe this to be the case, as I said, if your aim is upward, then God is your ally, right? And so he's there with you, bearing the cross, but you're still obliged to carry it, right? And you see that in the story too. That's embedded in the Passion story, because there's an insistence in traditional Christianity that the suffering and the death that a man would experience in that situation were real, despite the fact that God was also experiencing it, right? So there's this duality. And I think that's reflected in the idea of vicarious redemption.
So he used God was experiencing it, that Jesus is God, right? Clearly. Which is obviously, I think Jesus was divine, understood that way. Not that he really is, but that the texts portray him as divine. I think that when you get to the ancient world, we're not talking about strict monotheism. We're talking about a world full of divinities. We're talking about a world where divinity had different functions and different levels and yeah, I think that that's important to understand, because it's always either he was God or he wasn't God at all and he was just used by God. And it's like, look, there are different places Jesus fits into the scales here.
It's understood properly. It's like, yes, you'll have...
He was a son of God, a demigod, just like Heracles and other demigods would be understood.
Here's another way of thinking about it, is that if you aim upward unerringly, you have the spirit of what's good. What are you saying? You've established a relationship with the spirit of what's the highest good. Well, then that's with you. And that's not just a reality. It's like the ultimate reality. It's Nietzsche even alluded to that when he said, if you have a why, you can bear any how.
Yeah.
Well, what why? Well, the ultimate why. Well, what does that enable you to do? To bear the ultimate how. And that's exactly what the Passion story is. And so there is a vicarious...
I do wonder if there's so much Jungian and other kinds of philosophy that Jordan has been so baptized in that it's kind of hard for him to communicate in a straightforward manner for people to understand what he's implying.
It's redemption there, because
in many cases,
if you do it properly, you don't have to do it alone. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing on you. You know, and you see that too. There's an insistence in the entire biblical library that what humans are called to do is real. Like we're made in the image of God. We're participating in the process by which possibility is transformed in order. We're building, as far as I'm concerned, we're either building the city of God or we're building its alternative, right? With the domain of hell. Actually, right? Actually, really, as well as
actually, really.
I
mean, and
as well as metaphysically. So, man, this has got to be very frustrating for someone like Alex, who wants to use straightforward language and just be straightforward what is being meant and said. So if he asked him, what do you mean literally, like hell? Like, or what do you mean literally? Is the earth becoming literally heaven? Is the earth becoming literally hell? I don't understand what you're trying to say here, because there's a place understood for punishment called hell. There's a place where God's people will dwell according to the belief in heaven. And you're saying, what do you mean by all that? You know, well, what do you mean by mean?
It's interesting you say hell and actually in the same sentence, because
well, it's easier to believe in hell than heaven.
Well, one of the other criticisms that I made of you in this video was that I felt like you were appropriating religious language illegitimately to apply a sense of the sacred to profane things, to mundane things. And that's perhaps one example. So I can give you a few examples. I mean, one is implied in what you just said there, but you said it, I think, explicitly to Matt Fradd recently on Pints with Aquinas, where you said, if you have studied any amount of history and you don't believe that hell is real,
right,
then you're an idiot.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I understand, I think, what you mean by that, because hell...
See how the word games go with Jordan? It's so hard to even wrap your mind around, like, because he can't just say, oh, I don't mean the literal place. I mean, he can't just say that.
Like, you know, hell is a place on earth in many respects, right? Like if you study history and you look at just like what levels of depravity humanity can sink to, like, and you could quite poetically say, well, if hell isn't the right word to describe that, then I don't know what is.
Right.
Say something like that, right? But clearly, a theological conception of hell does not exist on planet Earth. It's somewhere you go after you die.
It's not so clear. I wouldn't say it's so clear.
Well, certainly not in the Jewish tradition. And okay,
Dante?
Maybe not in the. Okay, maybe not. But like, I mean, like a modern Christian who asks you, for example, do you believe in hell? And you know that what they mean.
They mean the place you go after you die.
The place you go after you die.
Yeah.
Then when you respond and say sort of, well, of course hell is real. Well, you don't believe in hell? Have you studied any amount of history? If you know, it's sort of, it feels like you're sort of describing two different things. There's a simplification. The other area where this largely happens, I think, is when you've said that the very act of doing science.
See, there's a concordance there between that concept of eternal punishment in the afterlife and the hell that unites all totalitarian states. But I don't know what the concordance is. Like I don't understand.
Like do you
I would just say that hell is obviously probably naturally derived by particular traditions that are in arid regions with, you know, gases of fire or volcanoes or whatever that come from the earth. And obviously I would say that hell at some point or underworld afterlives are in the earth. They are beneath us. They are a place to go when you die. But the idea that he's trying to tap into here, that there's like this connection, concordance as he used the term, but I think he means like there's some relationship, is because humans suffer. Humans have suffered for a long time. So the concept of an afterlife gets put in terminology of like, hey, this guy didn't suffer in his life, and he was a bad dude. He deserves this in his afterlife. This guy suffered in his life, was a good dude. He deserves, you know, a good afterlife. And you have to imagine that as humans suffer, we've come up with these concepts and ideas that theologically develop within systems of thought and potentially naturally, right? So it's not like someone had to write this down when let's make this up. I mean, humans still think humans are around when they're dead. They have dreams of them. They feel them. They hear them in their heads. They're still experiencing them and made them think they're still alive after they are now deceased. And so there's so many reasons to say why hell would become a place for those who still did bad in this world or whatever. Because they want these people to suffer that never got to suffer. And so there's the relationship's going to be there because humans invented this stuff through likely natural phenomena and through their experiences.
And I don't speculate generally on anything that's, let's say, beyond death. I mean, what the hell can you say about that? I don't have anything to say about that.
But that's another I don't know point, right? So if I ask you, for example, you know, do you think that Hitler is being punished now? You know, I mean, he's dead, but is he being punished? Or did he ever get punished?
The answer to that question is something like, what is the relationship between the evanescent consciousness of man and eternity? And the answer is, we don't know.
Yeah, when Matt Fradd asked you, do you believe in an afterlife, you said that something like your behaviors or your actions resonate through eternity.
Yeah, well, there's that, which is, you know, in a way an evasive answer too. But the thing is, we don't understand. We exist in relationship to the infinite, obviously. What that relationship is, no one knows how to conceptualize that in the final analysis. I don't understand the relationship between our binding temporally and eternity. Like, is there something permanent about our conscious experience? I don't know.
I think you excite your Christian listenership when you say, like, not only, you know, do I believe in hell, but you can't not believe in hell. I mean, are you serious? You seriously don't believe in hell? And they think, here's a strong sort of warrior.
Well, and you go, well, the other.
But then they realize that what you mean by hell is just like,
well, it's so
lots of human suffering and catastrophe, you know, on planet Earth.
It's more than that, because it is the
Jordan has to touch his face. He's so worked up.
Case that the invitation to hell is offered by the eternal usurper of the moral order. That's true. You end up in hell because you lie. That's also true. And so,
but when you say that's true, you end up in hell because you lie.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, the totalitarian state.
You're not allowed to use the word hell, right? Like, what is the thing you're describing? You end up where? In a totalitarian state.
Yes.
And that's fine.
A state of ultimate misery.
But I think this is where somebody might be prone to confusion. And you could say that's their fault. Maybe it is. But if somebody's listening to you and do you believe in hell? And you say, of course I believe in hell. How can you not believe in hell? And they go, thank goodness, because that of course is my worldview. I'd love to know how I can defend my vision of hell. And then they realize that when you say hell, what you actually mean is something like totalitarian human regimes.
I guess I mean at least that.
Sure.
Right? And so
fine.
This is wild.
I'm often trying to make a minimal case, right? If I'm trying to elaborate on the meaning of a religious text, what I'm trying to say in all humility is it means at least this. Now, does that cover the entire territory of the meaning? That's very unlikely. You're going to give an exhaustive account? I don't think so. What does that mean in eternity? It's the same question, and then we should draw.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. This is just, he's using so much theological, philosophical jargon and not just simple, straightforward communicating the points. It's hard for me to know. Look, I question the intelligence, particularly, of how people have viewed him as this, like, oh my God, he's a giant. He's an absolute, like, look, he's probably a really, really bright guy, don't get me wrong, but, like, sometimes I'm like, what's going on here? You're mixing up theology language that you would use in a theological context, deceiving millions who watch you into thinking more literal about these things because that's where they're coming from, and you're not meeting them there. You're not bending at all. And then, in a sense, when Alex tries to pin you down, you go, well, it's at least the human regimes of totalitarianism that is hell, but it could be more. It could be more, Christians. I could be agreeing with you at the end of the day, but I don't want to say no, and I don't want to say yes.
This part to a close. It's the same question in some sense as the reality of the resurrection of Christ. So the Christian interpretation is Christ defeats death and hell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, the logical objection to that is, well, where's the evidence for the defeat?
Mm-hmm.
Since death still exists, and so does malevolence.
Yeah, sure.
Well, the Christians then will escape, so to speak, into something like a symbolic interpretation and say, well, it's true in eternity.
Mm.
And I think fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that the idea that Christ defeated death and hell is true. But I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't happen. That's what the critical scholars typically would say.
And that does that bother me? Well, I'd rather know, and I'm continuing to investigate it. But I do know, for example,
Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who recently became a Christian, she just had a conversation with Richard Dawkins.
Yeah,
it hasn't gone out yet. I was there. I had the privilege of being. I've already heard it. I know what they spoke about. But one of the things that Ayaan does is, and I've described it as sort of almost comical, the way that Ayaan talks about her struggle with depression, suicidality, total hopelessness, and then finds that by praying, she's able to sort of elevate her life. And then cuts to Richard Dawkins, sort of, but do you believe that Mary was a virgin when she gave birth? It was funny. It was, I couldn't.
Level of analysis problem.
At the same time, I sort of understood it and Dawkins says, but surely when you go to church and you're having these feelings, Ayaan, you must recognize that the things he's saying at the pulpit are nonsense. And Ayaan said that she chooses to believe it. She says that I no longer find it to be nonsense because what she implied, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, I can't remember, but it was something like, look, I've been so captured by this meaning that although I don't really understand what it means to say that Jesus was born of a virgin, I just choose to believe it.
Well,
now that's fine. But what she does, what I was going to say is what she does is says that this to me is like a mystery. I don't really know exactly what it means, but I choose to believe that it's true. And I wonder if that's something like what you're doing here when you say that you believe it's true.
I can just tell you what my experience has been in this sort of thing. So I've spent a lot of time digging into the substructure of mythological accounts, right, in many different cultures.
Yeah.
Now, and my experience continually is the deeper I look, the more that's there. And then I see things come together that make sense that I thought were disparate. And that there doesn't seem to be any limit to that. And so now when I see things that are disparate or even contradictory, I think, well, as you already pointed out, given the nature of the biblical library, there's room for some contradiction. But more than that, I think, well, that might be illogical or irrational. or I might just not understand it. And my experience has been that presumption turns out to be the case far more often than not. And so, you can imagine that you can get the apprehension of a pattern, and you can think the pattern is compelling. And then there are details within the pattern that you don't know how to reconcile. But this is what Ayan is doing in accordance with your account. It's like, well,
Why not just negotiate and say there's some meaning here? I don't buy the stories as literal. I interpret them this way, and they give me value and power. They're powerful to me. Not trying to tiptoe or force feed yourself the dogma along with the meaning that you might gain from prayer, from meditation, from whatever it might be that gives you some of a helpful state out of a hopeless state. Make it metaphors. So what? Why not be open and just transparent about that instead of trying to take it literal and try to defend the virgin birth as if it happened literally?
Not willing to forego my view of the pattern because of some lack of concordance with details, especially given that I'm ignorant.
Yeah.
Well, I can only tell you what has been the pattern of my investigations. It's like the more deeply this is knocking and asking, the more I seek, the more is present.
There's so much here. Look, I get it. I've done this, and who knows where my future might lie in terms of investigating and continuing to maybe seek ideas that I've never studied and looked into. But at the end of the day, magic, believing these things literally happened, we should grow up and realize, hey, unless they are happening now, unless you see them happening yourself now, and you're not, in a padded room because you don't have some like hallucinations going on, I don't see any reason to think they happen literally. And if you want to say, listen, we're dealing with like metatruths and mythological stories that humans with deep intuitions and struggles are relating to, and they've given me kind of an escape by a mental ascent to a divinity in my mind, sure, go for it. But when we're speaking different languages, and he's using the same language most people think in a literal sense on some way, shape, or form. It annoys me. I don't know what Alex got going through his mind while he's doing this, but it's got to be a little bit like, after a while, man, just I wish he wasn't so, all over the place in what he's trying to say. I don't know. You tell me your thoughts. I'm curious in the comments below. Subscribe, check the bell, and hit all. Like the video, share it out there. Help us grow. We want this channel to hit 100,000. We want this channel to hit 1 million. I want to get more people checking out these reactions. Please let me know your thoughts down below. Until next time, see you then.